Rich Cardona, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm well, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And first off, I want to say thank you for your service. You are the second Marine we've had on the podcast, and I think the seventh veteran. So thanks
Oh,
for being
nice.
here. And I want to start off. I'm very interested to see like what you learned from the military, and I love to ask that question to veterans.
Oh man. The like, what did I learn? I mean, I learned looking back that I did not operate at my full capacity.
Mm,
That's one thing I could tell you I learned. But in it, I mean, there's standard things that everyone will say about character and discipline and routine and structure and unity and all that. I think what I learned the most from was fairness, and that's just different. And the reason I say that is even though we were in the Marines and in the service, and I think we were serving a very high calling, you know, I mean, the army, all military for that matter. I mean, we're all very imperfect still. So there's like a lot of things, and we used to say, misconduct is a distraction,
mm,
right? And people, there's a lot of misconduct that people just don't know about the military. And I think what I learned, and I wanted to go a different direction on purpose, is just that fairness aspect. It's so easy to judge, right? It's so easy to be like, man, what a shitbag that dude is, or what she is, or whatever, just because they fell from grace like once. I think patterns of behavior is a completely different thing. But when you look at the day in and day out kind of responsibilities, the commitment, the core values that we have to abide by, like just even doing it a week at a time requires kind of a lot, right?
mm,
So that that inability to necessarily detach until you're completely out, you know, creates room for error.
yeah.
And that's fine, man. Like that's so fine. And I think that's been a gift for me on the outside, just realizing that, my team that I work with, like I'm just so much better about mistakes, you know what I
Mm,
mean, than I used to be. So that aspect of fairness and kind of withholding your judgment, it was huge, was huge.
awesome. So after the military, you got into a new line of work. Can you kind of
Yeah.
explain that transition that you took and why you decided to go that route?
Yeah, man. So I went to Amazon and I got
Okay.
that job. I was in this program called the Pathways program, and that's for people who had an MBA. And I was getting an MBA from USC at the time. Well, I mean, I got it, but I was getting the MBA because I didn't think I was going to be marketable when I retired. I was 34 when I retired. I had spent half my life in the Marine Corps, literally. And I retired early. And I was like, there's no way anyone's going to give a shit that I flew a $24 million aircraft and blah 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 blah. I just was not confident for whatever reason. And it's crazy because the only jobs that would reply to me were really shitty entry
Mm,
level sales jobs. And I'm like, this the writing's on the wall, so I got to figure this out. I looked at the Amazon job. I applied for the Amazon job. I interviewed. I heard back almost immediately. They're like, let's do this.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, I went to Glassdoor for that specific operations position. And it was just like brutal. Then there was like this New York Times article that highlighted like all these bad things about Amazon. But then my life situation changed. And then I found out we were going to have a baby a few months later. So then I called them
Mm,
back and they're like, yeah. So we go in and, I know the audience here. I was literally, you know, neck and neck with under people who just finished their undergrad. And this was their first job as an area manager because I had to start as an area manager and I kind of moved a little bit faster. And that experience I think is probably valuable for younger people. Like the guaranteed salary, so to speak, may feel very stable, but you're going to get worked. You
mm-hmm.
are going to get worked. And I think if you are able to withstand that as a young person or a younger person kind of entering the industry or just any career field, that's going to be good because you will probably perform at a higher capacity the next place you go. But for me, like I've done a lot of crazy shit. I've done blue collar stuff and I know what it's like to lead, but it just wasn't for me. And I felt I very much felt like a number. And this I don't know about other people you've interviewed or who you will interview in the future, but that's just something that is very unsettling,
Yeah.
where you feel like regardless of, how much you're contributing or at what level you're performing, that, there's you're not, your escalation and your ascension is not necessarily going to be based on that.
Hmm.
People who really drank the Kool-Aid and were in love with Amazon but were not necessarily as high performers, I just kind of saw that was like they were moving. You know what I mean? And these are people who are really willing to kiss some serious ass, and that's just something I don't do. So I know I've been talking for a minute, but how I approached it was, in my mind I was like, fuck this place, but in my performance I was like, what can I do for the hourly associates
Hmm.
that are under my, that are under my supervision? They have a really crappy 10 hours straight of doing the same thing job with these tiny breaks and blah 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 blah. And my entire motivation was just to make sure that they were doing something worthwhile and that they got something out of it. So that was literally the only way I was able to kind of cling. And because I had that attitude about them, they performed at such a high level, and the culture on my team was ridiculous. And we were just lights out, and people were like, what are you doing, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing what everyone else does, I'm just talking to
Yeah.
my team all the time. So
Hmm.
that was the biggest takeaway. But man, I knew day one I was like, this isn't for me, and I had to get out about 2 years later.
Yeah, makes sense. Where do you think that leadership style came from? Because that is so important to have that constant communication. You saw a boost in productivity. So where do you think
Yeah.
you acquired those traits to become a more effective leader?
Marines don't know what's best for them, right? So like I didn't like, any stage you are in the Marine Corps or the military, like you don't know what's best for you. Someone else does. Like anyone
Hmm.
who's been in a little bit longer than you has seen a little bit more, or has a little
Right.
bit more experience. So it's just kind of like an instinctual at this point to like be like, take care of your people. And it's also, you've been exposed to so many different leaders, like you're kind of able to withdraw the things that you like and just keep in mind, like let it linger, some of the things that just left a bad taste in your mouth. And I used to call it, when I was at Amazon, like your leadership toolbox. I was like, the things you don't like about me, cool, flush them down the toilet. The things that you do like, put them in your leadership toolbox, because you probably like what Matt does about this. You like probably like how Stacy approaches this situation.
Hmm.
Codify your own kind of persona and leadership style, and you're just going to feel like a different person instead of just kind of doing what someone else does. It's way too easy to be like, I'm just going to do things like Kevin because Kevin's crushing it. Like,
Right.
fuck that. Like, do your own thing. Like, and I mean, you have the capacity for ingenuity, and you don't just need to follow in someone else's footsteps. But I think the biggest thing you can do is pay attention to the things that you never want to do. Like
Yeah.
never say never, but you could say I'll never do that. But as long as you have to make a conscious effort to not repeat some of the things that you kind of withstood, that's huge. And then the takeaways about what you noticed, whether it's the way a manager shows up early or the way a leader is fair, things along those lines, just compile it and do your own thing. But it was definitely the Marine Corps. I mean, hands down, that's where it came from.
Mhm. Doing your own thing is so important because I think nowadays a lot of people have role models, whether it's someone you know personally or someone that you're just following on social media. You look at someone, you're like saying, "Hey, I want to be like them in the gym." Maybe I don't know them, but I see on Instagram that they're running 10 miles a day, but I'm not a runner myself. I have to
Yes.
do it. No, you don't have to do it. You can
Yes,
find something else that you
exactly.
can do yourself. So I love that point because a lot of people out there, they're focusing on these super successful people and they're seeing, hey, this person worked 18 hours a day, or this person did this person did that. I need to be like them. That's not true at all. I think the most effective way for me is when you're reading books, listening to podcasts, when the audience, when you're listening to Rich, pull different things that you
Yes.
like. And if you don't
Yes.
like something, be like, hey, I'm not going to try it.
Yeah. So I have to use this analogy because you mentioned it. It's like so visual in my head, about running. I ran a couple marathons like not a few years ago, like a decade ago, probably. And they went really well and they were cool. But the advice, you get from so many people is ridiculous. And I remember reading this article in Runner's World, and it's just like, run the mile you're in and run the race that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yep.
was like so helpful because, dude, there could be people passing you left and right mile two, but like, dude, you don't know what's going to happen at mile 22. Those people could be back at 18, like
Yeah.
dying. And, little things like the people who have the belts with the water bottles on them, like that is so not me, dude. Like I can't run with anything on me, right?
Right.
Or like an armband with like your phone on there. Like, no, like I can't. So it's like run the race that you're in, run the mile that you're in, and that's all you need to focus on. So I think that's very good insight, man. I just had to echo that.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that example because especially in running or I guess any sport really, there a lot of people are kind of quote unquote fakers. They go out and they buy all the gadgets to look like they are the part, but when it comes to actually do the event, they can't perform well. I think
Sure.
it was either Joe Rogan or Cam Hanes were talking about ultra marathons or showing up to a race and they're like, I'm not concerned about the person that comes with the $500 shoes and all this
Yeah.
equipment. Like I'm
Yes.
concerned about the dude that looks like he just came from a farm. He's wearing an old t-shirt,
Yeah.
old sneakers, and they're
Totally.
the ones that like they actually put in the work and they live what they are doing.
100%. one hundred
Yeah,
percent.
that's good. So you working at Amazon, a lot of people view that as, I mean, Amazon, they run the world basically. Amazon is a great company. You
Sure.
say, hey, my name's Rich. I work for Amazon. People are like, oh, that's great. What made you decide, hey, this is not right for me and I'm going to leave even though people might view it as a good career? How do you get away from that stigma?
Yeah, man. Two major things. One is like you have to look at what lies ahead. And like, do I want to be a general manager? Like, he or she is here all the time.
Yeah.
Do I want to be senior operations manager? Do I want to have to go through that process? There's like this process you have to go through in order to kind of get to this senior level position. And it was just like this ridiculous. I mean, I can't explain it, but you have to ask yourself, is that what I want? And if it is what you want and you want to be a general manager and you want your own facility or whatever, then you will, do anything in your power to make that happen. But if not, if there's a misalignment there, it's never going to work out. And I recognize that pretty early, but even though like things started to get better just because performance was so good, it still didn't change my mind. So
Mm,
it's kind of like this fucking runway is short. Like I got to figure it out. So that was one. And I could tell you, and from a personal perspective, like I've been previously married, and I remember like going to bed and being like, is this it? And that's how I felt about that. Like that's how I felt about things in my personal life. That's how I felt about that career. And I was just like, it's just like it's unnerving, right? Like that shit sits with you.
yeah.
So that was number one. Like, this is so not good for me. Like, what am I doing? Why would I continue to do something I just don't want to do? And the second thing I would say is just kind of like the belief that there's not that there's more, but that you can actually create something.
Hmm.
And whether again, like whether you're younger, in your early 20s or early 30s or whatever it is, like the ability to actually create, manifest, I will use that word because I'm really into that. But you actually can create the life that you want. And I
100%.
write that and I have a gratitude journal, like, dude. And you're talking to a guy who didn't believe in meditation, who didn't believe in manifestation or fucking journaling or any of that. Nothing, none of it. Now I
Hmm.
do it religiously and my life has completely changed. But I write, I am the architect of my own life. That's the last sentence every
Nice.
single night when I write. And I believe it to be true. So you think, like you said, like it's a good job, it's a good career. I had to think about what people would think. I had to think about the fact that I had an MBA and I was going to walk away from this job, that I was
Exactly.
making a good salary, that I had a big home, that I was providing for my family. But you know what? You know what suffered? My character. I
Mm,
was a total fucking piece, man. Like I was not a good husband. I was not a good father. I was just not a good dude.
mm,
And I just kind of covered it up by working my face off. And at some point, man, the paths don't converge. Like, and that is the path that you're supposed to be on, and then the path that you are on. And when you get to that realization, I believe there is the sense of urgency to end it
yeah.
right away. And that's what I did. I mean, I put myself in a position to get fired, to be completely honest, by
Mm,
just being crazy, like taking so many risks. But I also was prepared to quit, and I did exactly that. And I moved in with my in laws, and everything changed. But that if you go to bed with that, like, is this it? Like, at some point, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like, it will catch up. The more you try to submerge these tugs on your like soul that something is off kilter, it's gonna be a rude awakening. So I think having those tough conversations with yourself and being able to kind of have the insight, or at least like explore self-awareness and just like look into what you're feeling a little bit more, can make a very big difference early on.
I think one of the most dangerous things in life is going to bed at night, like you said, and thinking to yourself, I'm doing the same thing tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it's just a constant cycle of wake up at the same time, do the same exact thing every day. You don't have time for what you want to do. You don't have time for your family. You don't have time to improve yourself. You're just a constant cycle. You get home, you don't want to do anything. You go to bed, wake up, start over again. It's
Yeah.
tragic that people
Yeah.
deal with that.
Well, I want to caveat that real quick. I'm so glad you said that because I do the same thing every day now, but
Yes, but it's a lot different now.
it's extraordinarily different. Like, I, as soon as my alarm goes off and like it's usually like 4:01 and I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm
Yep.
pumped. You know what I mean? Like, I do all those things that I mentioned, like the meditation, I get the gym knocked out, all that stuff. And then I'm like so ready. And I create the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, that's the difference. Like,
Yep.
I'm creating the work. And whether it's shitty work or work that I think is actually progressing me, or whether it's the actual deep work that is knocking the big business dominoes over, like, it doesn't matter. Like, doing the boring work, it actually yields unboring results. However, like we talked about before, if you're not in the right place, then it is going to be agonizing.
Mm-hmm.
Agonizing.
Exactly. What made you make that switch to doing more meditation, more journaling?
I read a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, early last year or early this year, I believe it was, and it was called "Forgetting How to Be Yourself" or something along those lines. It's been such a complicated title, and there's a gentleman I interviewed. He's the owner of First Form, and he has this podcast called Real
Mm-hmm.
AF, Andy
Yep.
Frisella.
Yeah.
And when I interviewed him, we were talking about it because he used to talk on his podcast about how he'd visualize, his private jet and his cars and all that stuff. And we had a really good conversation about that. And it really kind of flipped my mind. And I was like, he does it? Because that's what made me take it from this kind of kumbaya weird thing to like regular people do it. And he got that because he started looking into it and realized that some of the best athletes to ever do what they
Mm-hmm.
do were doing it as well. So there must be something to it. Well, he had the same effect on me. So I read that book and I started realizing that brain plasticity and manifestation and visualization and quantum physics and all this crazy shit is actually, it's hard to not believe after you kind of read about it. So that's what got me into that. So it's fairly new for me, but I could tell you for a fact, manifestation combined with law of attraction. And I think you had an episode on law of attraction,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Have you had the author on?
No, I've not yet.
Okay, I could put you in
Working
touch
on
with
it.
him if you
Oh,
want,
that'd be
but
awesome.
it's real. It's real. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't feel like you're the type of person, Matt, that wants to be an average dude,
No, not at all.
and I certainly don't want to be average either. So it's like, let me explore the things that a lot of people think is ridiculous, but some of the best people or the
Mm-hmm.
people I want to emulate are doing. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. I love your example with Andy because a lot of people do view meditation, journaling as kind of just like soft stuff. Like you don't need to be doing it. Like just everybody kind of pushes it aside and it's not worth my time, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
Andy is a badass dude. So if he's doing
Yes.
something like that, like
Yeah.
that's saying something.
Let me tell you one thing. One guy at First Forum said to me, and I was like, "Dude, so tell me, you've been with him longer than almost anybody." And I go, "What's the thing that keeps you here?" Not like
Mhm.
he had a reason to leave, but I'm like, "What keeps you here?" He
Yeah.
goes, "Everything he's ever said we were gonna do has happened." And
Mm.
I'm like, "That is ridiculous." Like,
Yeah.
that's like, you don't need marketing,
No.
right? You don't need a recruiter for that.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that line. But yeah, that was huge.
That is so cool. Have you tried 75 hard?
Yeah, I failed it a bunch of times, and I wrote him about it. And this one time I got to like day 59. The first few times it was traveling that screwed me up as far as the diet, but
Mhm.
I got to day 59 or maybe 60 something, and I was like right there, and I got interrupted by my daughter for something, and I was on page 9 of 10 on my reading that day, and I forgot to
Oh,
go reread. So I owned it, and I was like, yeah, I failed. And I sent him, dude, but I learned so much this time around. And he's like, no moral victories. And I'm like, fuck you. I was like, so mad, dude. I was like, so mad. I'm like, dude, but that's how he is. So yeah,
yeah,
75 hard has actually changed my life. I mean, I have the powerless book right
nice.
here that I use every day. But yeah, I mean, that kind of thing, which it doesn't need to be 75 hard, but really kind of adding a formula
Hmm.
to how you approach your day and being proactive instead of reactive and doing all this mental stuff. I mean, it really changes everything.
Yeah. Doing anything consistently, small steps every single day is going to improve your life tenfold.
Yeah,
Even if it doesn't seem like it adds up right now, over time, that is going to change the course of your life entirely.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Um, you talk about creating urgency in life. So you leave Amazon, you find your passion, now you're doing work that you're enjoying and you're pushing the needle every single day. So what message do you have for people to create some urgency in their life? Maybe they're not satisfied with where they are. Maybe they think that the end is far, far away and they don't need any urgency right now. But how can we all take the step necessary today?
The days are long, but the years are short. You know, like you know what it's like, man. Like you get at the end of the week sometimes, and you're just like, geez, like I just got my ass kicked, or I kicked
Yeah.
some serious ass, whatever it is. But the years go fast. And I think this like imaginary timeline of like just ridiculous longevity is just not practical. And I mean, I have it right there, but it says one life, and that's a Gary Vee thing. But Jesse Itzler, um, you know, if anyone who doesn't know him, he's a really good follow. But he has this thing where he talks about experiences are more important than things.
Hmm.
And I agree with him. And one way he put it, as far as something to kind of increase a state of urgency or at least a little bit more intentionality in your life, was he goes, let's say you don't live near your parents, you're 20, whatever, 30, whatever, you don't live near your parents, and you see them, maybe, you see them Christmas and then you see them on their birthday or whatever. He goes, and maybe on a good year, you fly out to see them 4 times because you're doing your career, they're where they're at, whatever. He goes, so let's just say they're 70 something, right? Maybe someone my age. He goes, that means if they have 14 years left, you'll only see them 28 more times,
Hmm.
something along those lines. He's like, think about it. He's like, so the next time you see them, 27. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I mean, I never thought of anything like that. So that's one way. Like, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, as long as, I mean, I have a timeline for the things I'm doing, but even right now, like if everything were to end tomorrow, like I'm still exactly where I need to be.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing for me, and this may not resonate with a lot of people, but here's what I could tell you. I lost a lot of friends in the Marine Corps in my last 4 years, and none of it was combat related. I was a TAC helicopter pilot, and that's pretty dangerous business, but it's also dangerous just fucking training. As a matter of
Hmm.
fact, there was an Osprey that went down just a few days ago, and 4 Marines were killed. And you go out and like no one's some of those flights seem very routine, but all it takes is like one little thing and it's over.
Yeah.
And losing those friends really gave me some perspective on just how my life should be lived. And some of these people were fathers and husbands. Some of them didn't even get to see their daughters, or won't see their daughters grow up. They're not going to get to achieve their goals. So for me, it's like, if they were here, or if they could like spy on me right now, and I was just living
Hmm.
this miserable life working at Amazon, if I was just like a fat piece, who wasn't doing anything, if I wasn't constantly trying to be a better father, a better husband, then they would crush me
Yeah.
for
Selfish.
that.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like I owe it to them. Now, that's clearly personal, but I think no matter what age you are, if you are literally trying to kind of level up all the time, reduce the things that you don't want to do, and just kind of focus on the things that literally just kind of energize you and push you forward to the goals you want. And goals change, by the way. So
Hmm.
never feel bad. Like if you get close to a goal and you're like, you know what, I thought I wanted this, but I don't. Um, that that aspiration to improve creates that sense of urgency because you just start to want more.
Yeah.
When you're not doing the things that move you forward, you don't want more, but you just do it because it's convenient. Just like you talked about, you'll get home, you'll eat, and you'll just like watch something. And then it's just like you just fucking watch TV till you're too tired to stay awake, and then you go to bed. And the
Hmm.
next morning you have your alarm set to go to the gym, but you actually just don't end up going because like the local benefit, which is thinking the local benefit, meaning the immediate benefit when you set your alarm the night before, makes you feel good,
Yeah.
right? But that disappears 8 hours later when you wake up. But the global benefit is what no one wants to do, which is the
Hmm.
thing like, what could that mean over time, right? Like for someone like me, dude, I have come from a chubby family. It's like, I'm going to have the first six pack in this family. I'm 40, almost 42, but I'm going to make it happen. Somehow, some
Nice.
way, I'm going to make this
Yeah.
happen. I don't have good genetics, but I'm going to make it happen.
Hmm.
So little things like that, man, I believe are what creates a sense of urgency. So if you are really diving into the things that you're passionate about, which it's a progressive uncovering, by the way, if you're in your 20s, so don't worry about it. But as long as you're trying to improve, I think that urgency becomes kind of inherent and not necessarily has to be forced. And people are going to notice it, and you're going to attract more people like you and people that are further ahead of you, and they're going to take an interest in your journey. And then you're going to just kind of see the tide shift.
Hmm.
I think that's what I could say, man. Like, I really wish I had a better answer, but that's how I see it.
Oh, it's a great answer. And the biggest problem that I see that ties into what you just said is a lot of people around my age group, people that are in college or out of college, they're going through this track on a career and they're always complaining. Like, oh, my classes are so hard, or I hate work, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like they're bragging that they don't like what they're doing. And it's always
Mhm.
like kind of like a competition of who can have the hardest thing that they don't like to do.
Yes.
And it's just a constant cycle of that. And it drives me crazy because, yeah, you
Yes.
might be making good money. I mean, you're a great example, making good money at Amazon, but you're hating what you're doing.
Oh, man.
So if you're making the money, but you're not happy, like, get out. Get out of there and find something that actually speaks to you because if you go through 1 year at this job, soon that's going to turn into 5. Soon that's going to turn to 15,
Yes.
20. And all of a sudden, your life,
Yes.
the prime of your life, is gone because you couldn't make the decision to move on.
It's true. I mean, I've seen it and I've lived it, and that is exactly how it goes. So really good insight from you. But yeah, if you're listening, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a lot that weighs on society, or society weighs a lot on our decisions. A lot of people, they think they have to be the doctor, they have to be the lawyer, they have to be the entrepreneur. That's super popular right now. Everybody thinks they have to be an entrepreneur in some
Yeah.
sort of fashion.
Yeah.
Um, you know, society's laying all of these expectations on us that it's not popular to go scoop ice cream, or it's not popular to go landscape. These things that society still needs and jobs that can be very fruitful, people
Yes.
aren't doing because people look at people differently that do those jobs. How
Yes.
can you kind of give us some guidance for maybe your passion is something that it's not the highest paying job. It's not something that people look at as impressive, but you got to do it anyways if that's what you want.
Well, you said it when we were kind of warming up about, define success and how you just don't believe it's strictly related to finances, and I'm going to echo that. But like here's the thing, when I talked about what energizes you, that's literally the thing that allows you to just live more fulfilling days and more
Hmm.
fulfilling weeks and months and then years, and you're not going to be one of those people who just talks about how shitty your college experience was because you were a fucking marketing major and ended up at a marketing firm that you don't care about and you actually want to be an architect.
Hmm.
So the trade-off is up to you, and the trade-off is simply this: are you willing to the real thing is this. Let me backtrack. Success, and you didn't even ask it, but I'm going to kind of cut ahead. Success is arriving to a point where you are like legitimately and authentically just not concerned what anyone has to say. So
Yes.
like, we talked about when I left Amazon, I was like wondered for like a second. I was like, oh man, what are my friends going to think? What are the other
Hmm.
people? What are the people in my MBA class going to think? What are the people at Amazon going to think? What's my family gonna, just
Yep.
all these things, from going to this salary to nothing to moving in with your in-laws and all this other stuff. And then I realized like, I don't care. And then when it happened, the biggest just weight was off my shoulders and I was relieved.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that is true success. But to answer your question is, now I'm telling you, I work harder than I did there. I work harder than I did in the Marine Corps. I put more into my day than I did when I was in the Marine Corps, believe it or not. And that's because I enjoy what I'm doing. So, like, yeah, scooping ice cream or doing construction or being a firefighter or any of the fucking boring shit that you think is beneath you, but is actually what you want to do, you're far better off, because not only is there going to be an element of play
Mm-hmm.
to it, you know what I mean? But your productivity and all these other things, they're going to kind of compound into your total motivation. And that motivation is going to be really hard to get sapped, you know what I mean? Especially by harder work and challenges. So yeah, maybe you start, literally, I just picked up these clients not long ago. I have a gentleman who's a COO of a $40 million company, and they own a bunch of restaurants. They own some Arby's, Starbucks, Buffalo Wild Wings Go, Mellow Mushroom, stuff like that. This COO was a server at Buffalo Wild Wings, man.
Mm.
Now he's making big money moves all the time.
Yeah.
He just got exposed to the hospitality industry. He took his job seriously. He didn't mind, the hours. He didn't mind working for tips. He just learned more. And that curiosity like gets unveiled like kind of the further you go. And at any point, like we talked about earlier, you could say to yourself like, damn, this isn't what I want to do. Or you could be like, holy shit, this is even cooler than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Now I could, instead of scooping ice cream, now I'm a manager and I'm helping make kind of better decisions. And you know what? Now I'm going to save up and I'm going to buy my own franchise, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to open my own. Doesn't matter. So the money part is just, I hate this cliche, but like the money will come.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you have to think of the trade off in the interim. If you go for the money and submerge or just put to the side like what you actually want to do, that's going to get further and further away. And it's going to be harder and harder to climb your way towards that when the time comes where you've had enough. But if you're doing what you want to do the whole time, I believe that time period is far shorter to where you're actually going to be making the money you want, or being profitable, or having the position or title that you want, or whatever it may be. So if you are first, if the first concern about what you're doing is what other people will think or say, then it's already fucking over.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like, get comfortable with that, and you will start to bypass and just fly ahead of everyone around you who's kind of stuck in that fixed mindset that this is beneath me. This is, not going to go anywhere. Like, dude, people are attracted to confidence more than anything. And when they
Right.
see that you love what you do, you're going to feel way better about it, because they're going to be fucking miserable talking about the classes they hate. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's how I look at it.
That's such a good definition. It's so unique. I've never heard someone on this podcast say anything about success is not worrying about what other people think. And I think it's so important, because there's a lot of people out there that they worry about what other people think. And those people that they're worrying about, they don't even care about them. It's maybe
Yes.
someone from high school 10 years ago that you don't even talk to, or it's someone from
Mm-hmm.
work that you don't even talk about. It's
Mm-hmm.
just these people that maybe they're following you on social media, or they're connected to you through mutual connections, and you're worried about them, but those people aren't in your inner circle. So it's like, why are you concerned about people that you're not even caring about, or they don't care about you?
Mm-hmm. So two things, Alex Hormozy and Tom Bilyeu. I got to tell you two things that one of each of them told me.
Okay.
One is um, uh, what Alex said. Oh, God, I lost my train of thought for a second. We were talking about people thinking about you, and he said, let me go talk to Tom first. Tom said, whatever you don't want people to think about you, they're already thinking.
Mm,
And the other thing is, but then he says, but he's like, they're probably not thinking about you. And that's where we go
yeah.
to Alex, where Alex said, he always says, clients will always find a way to leave you. You know what I mean? And he goes, because people are self-serving. It will
Yeah.
always be about them first. So even if you've done everything right, just know that some people are just going to leave, and it has
Hmm.
nothing to do with you. And that's exactly how we operate. Like, and he's really kind of dark about it sometimes. He goes, even though I'm doing all this and making all this social media and podcasts and helping people, it's like, when I die, like people are going to forget a few days later. He's like, Betty White died. Everyone loved her. He's like, a couple days talking about it, and then it's over. Like
Yeah.
no one's going to talk about her. So he just puts everything he can into like what's happening now, with no regard to thinking about what other people think. But it, generally, you, me, my wife, my daughters, my friends, like everyone is always going to be concerned with themselves first. It's
Mhm.
just human nature. It's not a knock. And that's just the way it is. So to kind of, it's actually almost strangely arrogant for you to think so many people are thinking about you or spending a
Yeah,
lot of time
exactly.
thinking about you. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yep.
just like if you break that habit, freaking game on.
Yeah.
You're gonna be set.
Yeah, definitely. Another question for you about passions and something that you're interested in. So, let's say someone wants to leave that job. They want
Mhm.
to break off and do something that actually interests them, but maybe it's not something that's going to pay them right away. Maybe they want to start a podcast and they're not going to get a sponsorship day one, or they want to start their own business. They're not going to be in the green for maybe a couple of years if they're doing XYZ, whatever. How can you find inspiration to still take that leap, even if it is not going to generate any revenue?
The thing that's going to separate you from everyone is your ability to stack skills, and that's all you have to think. That's how you have to think about it. Like I'm literally just stacking skills. Like the pay doesn't matter. If I'm getting paid shit, but I'm going all in and I'm asking the people who've been here longer questions if they're spending extra time with me again. If people see that you're kind of bought into yourself and
Mm-hmm.
then bought into whatever it is that you're doing, like that's where that's where people almost feel inclined to help you along your way, right? Like, and for two reasons: one, you remind them of them, or two, you are on a path that they're never going to reach, so they're just like, I might as well give this person something because I'm not going to get there. And it's just weird how really altruistic people become when you do that. But skill stacking is going to be the most important thing. So you could be I'm just going to use marketing because I know marketing, but let's just say you're at a marketing firm or you're a marketing associate or whatever, and maybe you are dabbling in design, and maybe your design's on point, but you've always kind of wondered, you know um, how the words are going to affect the person, and you've never
Mm-hmm.
really understood how to really kind of immerse yourself in copy. So you start kind of stacking on the copy skill. All of a sudden you now have an eye for what looks good and what could pop, but you also have something that's going to keep people reading, and you now know how to make someone read the first sentence, and that first sentence is going to make them want to read the second sentence. Okay, cool. So you're doing that. Then you kind of start stacking upon that skill. It's like, okay, well, maybe how could I use video, or how could I use audio as a medium, like a
Mm-hmm.
podcast or anything like that? Stacking skills matters, man. Like like people stop, like where they just stop a lot of times, like where they need to be, and that's it. That's not the way to do it. So, and I told this story the other day. I applied to this photography store when I quit my job, entry level, and they never called me back. I just wanted
Really?
to really understand like how cameras work and f-stops and ISO and fucking all apertures, like all that stuff. And none of them took me on. I'm like, dude, like I'm broke. I would have to drive an hour to go there. Like I got an MBA, and my wife's like, oh, maybe you're just overqualified. And I was like, I even wrote a bunch of them, but I never heard back. I'm like, you're
Mm-hmm.
ghosting me, and I could probably give you 10 times more than any other employee. And by the
Yeah.
way, I'm going to be a sponge
Yeah.
and nothing.
Mm.
Now, would that have helped? Yes, and it's kind of a blessing in disguise that it didn't work out. But stacking skills is the investment. Okay, like the financial return is not what you need to be concerned about, because it's going to come later.
Yeah.
Because you will have like aggregated all these things and made it kind of like the leadership toolbox. You will have made it into your business or your expertise.
That's awesome. Great advice. Rich, you're someone that has a great resume. Military, Amazon, everything you're doing now with your business. A lot of people may view you as someone that's going to go buy the flashy cars, clothes, houses, but you're not necessarily like that. So, what is your view on material objects, and why do you stray away from those?
What material object has ever given me like true long-term fulfillment?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, this microphone, maybe. Like, I don't know, like this laptop. I mean, there's utilization and then there's like fulfillment. And I have learned that it's just like a new car, right? Like you get a new car and you can be super pumped about it, but at some point it just kind of becomes like the car,
Yep.
not the new car, and not
Hmm.
like this exciting thing to get in every day. So that and having not made a lot of money in the beginning of my business, like really kind of helped me put things in perspective. And I just actually made my first vision board the other day. Again,
Nice.
another one of those things that I thought was complete
Yep.
bullshit. And on there are a bunch of things. None of it's really material. There's an interview. I want to interview Jimmy Fallon one day. I
Mm.
want to interview The Rock one day. I want to take my entire family, in-laws, my parents, my sister, my brother-in-law. I want to take all of us to this island in Sicily that my wife and I have been to. I want to be able to take them and pay for that. Right? It's an experience that's invaluable, right? I'm looking at the Olympics. I want to take my daughters to the Olympics. I want them to see track and field up close and personal. I want to see, I don't care, man. Like I want them to see me crying when I hear the national anthem and
Yeah.
see someone who like completely went all out and just put it all on the line. And they were just 0.03% better than the next person. And they
Hmm.
are the best in the world. Like these are the things that I think about. And more deeply, I want them to see that I, again, like I mentioned earlier, that I'm manifesting it. So that's kind of how I look at it. And there's just the car is not going to matter. A bigger TV is not going to matter. House. I mean, the house, it doesn't need to be significant, but it needs to be perfect for us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So these are the types of things I think about. And I'll give you I want to really bring it home. Certain things that mean certain things that are important to me are I'm looking at my lawn right now outside this window. I don't want to mow lawns ever again, man. Like I'm
Hmm.
just so done with that shit. Not because I'm too good for it, but because that doesn't add value.
Yeah.
I live in an older neighborhood because I live on a golf course, and these dudes are obsessive about their lawns. I'm
Hmm.
like, I will never be that guy. I love paying people to do that for me because that allows me to do this,
Right.
right? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's
Exactly.
like, again, like that's one of those things. Like that's not material, but that saves me time. So it gives me more time doing the thing that I love to do. So like the car's never gonna like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like maybe I'll have something awesome one day and maybe it'll be really cool. But
Mhm.
in my mind, it just doesn't matter. Clothes, like it's actually on my law of attraction kind of clarity worksheet. I just want to wear the shit that kind of represents me. I used to think like, oh, I need to go to Nordstrom's or Banana and just like whatever. And let me tell you, my first job before Amazon was as a sales rep. I took that shitty job
Mhm.
and I was traveling in a suit. And I'm like, dude, traveling in a suit sucks.
Yep.
I hate fucking silky socks. I hate sweating. I hate having pit stains because I was on a flight in a suit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like little things like that. And let me just tell you, I thought about this podcast before we started. I'm sorry, man. I talk a
No
lot.
worries.
But
Love it.
the one thing I was thinking about that I had to mention was, again, in the defined success realm, is not doing what you don't want to do is real success as well.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to Vegas for the fantasy football draft this year. I love my friends, but I don't want to go because you know what? I'm dialed in right now. So I'm not going to go.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to work with you, even though you're offering me a lot of money. Okay, cool. Like, that is the best feeling. Like, I don't want to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to whatever. So that sounds crazy, but I cannot tell you the amount of fulfillment that gives me because all that makes room for is what I want to do. Right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I think about it. And that sounds unbelievably generic or simple, but it has redefined how I live.
Yeah, that's great. I love the vision board example. So I made my first vision board a year or two ago,
Nice.
and I started with printing out pictures of like, all right, the truck, the watch. Like it started
Yeah.
material, and then I got like 3 or 4 pictures printed. I was like, all right, what else? And I was like trying to think of like material things. I was like, that's really like all I ever wanted. Like it's not much, and like that stuff isn't even a priority. So then I started thinking, okay, what else can I put on there? Because I got a big like bulletin board. Like I still got a lot of room to fill. So
Yeah.
I was like, all right, travel. Pick all these travel destinations.
Yes.
Put that on there. That is not materialistic. And then also, I started thinking of people that I've read their books or I've heard them in an interview. Okay, I love David Goggins' mindset. I'm going to put David Goggins on here. I love how Jay Shetty interacts with people. I'm going to put Jay Shetty on here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this guy for his business philosophy. I'm going to put them on here. So
Yeah.
it's different things that it's like more of chasing. the idea or the philosophy of something, not and the experience as well. Like you said with Jesse Itzler, chase those experiences, not just the material objects. If you stack a bunch of money, like go ahead, spend it. Like I feel like if you earned it, go ahead. But for me, that is never going to be the priority. The priority is
Mm-hmm.
going to be being the best version of myself, being, achieving the goals and the objectives that I want in life. And then whatever comes from that comes, and we'll take care of it then. But at this time, it doesn't need to be in the conversation.
Yeah, I think being the best version of yourself, you know, for people who don't, subscribe to that philosophy, I have seen, and I have seen it in myself as well, that that makes a lot of room for insecurities and for those to weigh heavier.
Yeah.
I think insecurities are very normal in people, but I think the goal is not to eliminate them, but to minimize them.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you, like, if I have a prospect that I'm like, holy shit, we're 90% down the road, they're signing, and then all of a sudden something changes, like it's almost impossible for me not to take it personally. But the 7 days I would have spent thinking about it now turns to maybe 7 hours. And I'm just like, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the best version of yourself really kind of reduces your capacity to dwell on anything that doesn't serve you. And I think that's what's overlooked. Like the best version of yourself, people, I think when people hear that, they think of like, you being fit, you having money, you doing whatever you want. But it's like, it's really more of like being
And
centered
yeah.
and at peace with yourself.
Yep.
And again, that might sound crazy and foreign to people, especially younger people, but that's just where you want to live. And if you're living in that headspace, it's like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Like it really is. It's
Huge
crazy.
advantage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge advantage.
Yeah. Rich, all right. You said alarm goes off 4:01 a.m. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Gets me out of bed. Like the work has to get done. Like the work has to get done. Like my core values, they're right here. Continuous improvement is number three. And like continuous improvement, it has obviously been a theme of this podcast on, but like having order and clarity in your life matters. And I mean, just there's this Breaking Bad episode called Half Measures, and it's like one of my favorite episodes because there's this really good anecdote in there about not really committing to something and how that could unfold. So kind of a lack of commitment, the consequence of a lack of commitment is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want chaos, man. Like I just don't. So even if I stay up and I hate it because I'm on the East Coast and you are too, but like I'm watching the NBA finals right now. Like
Yeah.
I will give myself that once a year. So I'm watching the finals and I'm like, oh, dude, it's almost midnight. It's like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, well, okay, tomorrow's going to be a little rough,
Yep.
but like the work's got to get done. If the work doesn't need to get done, or if you don't feel that, then you're not doing the right thing.
Right.
I'm telling you, you're not doing the right thing. It's easy to not want to get the work done when you're not doing what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, man, like, dude, you're never gonna fill up the cup. I'm telling you, like, I've interviewed billionaires, and like they're just not satisfied. Like the
Yeah.
real ones, man. Like Andy said it. He goes, I could be on a yacht right now on off the coast of Greece for the next year if I wanted to. He goes, but I'd rather be here. He goes, especially for them. And there's like people
Mm-hmm.
working out at the gym that we were overlooking.
That's
Like he
awesome.
wants to be there, man.
Yeah.
It's so much less important for him to do whatever he wants with his fuck you money.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say. The work needs to get done.
Yeah.
Period.
Great message right there. Rich, before my last question for you, can you kind of plug your social medias, what you're doing right now? You're doing some great work. So, where do you want the audience to check you out at?
Yeah. So it's funny that you and I talked on Instagram because I'm like hardly on social right now. I'm in the season of no.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
in a
cool.
very addition by subtraction mentality where I just continue to shed anything that is not relevant to the goals and my
Mm.
offer and all this other stuff. But anyway, it's just funny. I'm glad we connected. It's at Rich Cardona _ on Insta. And then on LinkedIn, I'm probably a little bit more active just because I have a better following there, Rich Cardona. So yeah, just check me out. I'd love to connect with you guys. If you got anything good from this podcast, definitely send me a message.
Awesome. Last question for you. If you were to leave the audience with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Um, y- if you cannot or are not willing to figure out how to take care of yourself, you will never be able to take care of anyone else. And it's not your duty to take care of other people, so to speak, you know, whether it's family. I mean, it is, but it's not like your family, your team, if you have employees, your classmates, or anything like that. But your ability to help them will directly correlate to your ability to help yourself.
Hmm.
And I think troubleshooting is just one of the most like underrated mentalities there is. I think we could figure out 90% of the things that challenge us, but we default to just like trying to find advice or call someone or run something. Dude, let me tell you this. Every time I like try and go get a second opinion, my mind's already made up. It's like, why am I even
Yeah.
texting them? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I already know this shit is fucking banging. Like, why am I going to call them and ask if this is good copy? Like, I
Yep.
already know, right? Maybe I'll get something small, but you already know the answers to the questions you're asking people a lot of the time. 90% of things I believe you could troubleshoot and figure out on your own. And again, this kind of really ties into the theme of this podcast, which is self-improvement, being the best version of yourself. If you're able to help yourself, if you're able to be a resource to yourself and tap into that, way more people are going to be willing to help you than the person who's always asking for help and doesn't do
Yep.
shit, didn't read the book, didn't do the studying, didn't listen to the documentary, who didn't invest in their own education by going to a conference or anything like that. Like, people don't want to help those people.
Hmm.
So if you can learn to take care of yourself, your life will be just categorically different.
Yeah. 100%. Great advice. Everyone, become a beginner again, learn how to improve yourself, and just constantly learn and grow every single day. Rich Cardona, it's been absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining and dropping all this value. Definitely appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on.